The knock on my door came at 2:15 p.m. on a rainy Tuesday. I almost didn't answer. I never get visitors. Usually, it's someone selling gutters or asking if I want to sell my house for cash. But the knock came again, harder this time. Desperate. So, I checked the window. A young man stood on my doorstep. He was soaking wet, shivering in a trench coat that looked too thin for an Ohio November. He didn't look like a salesperson. He looked terrified. I opened the door part way, leaving the chain on. "Can I help you?" I asked. He stared at me for a moment, water dripping from his nose. He opened his mouth, closed it, and tried again. "Are you Eleanor Vance?" Something about his face hit me in the chest. The shape of his jaw. The way he held his shoulders. "Who's asking?" "I'm Leo," he said, his voice shaking from the cold. "I'm Michael's son." My hand tightened on the doorframe until my knuckles turned white. I hadn't heard my son's name spoken out loud in 26 years. Not since the morning I found the empty tin under the floorboards and realized my life was over. "I don't have a son," I said. My voice was colder than the rain. I started to close the door. "The blue tin!" he shouted. I froze. The world narrowed to just his face. "He told me to say that," the boy rushed on, jamming his foot in the door. "He said, 'Tell her about the Royal Dansk blue tin under the pantry floorboard, behind the broom.' He said it's the only way you'd know I was telling the truth." I stared at this boy with my dead husband's eyes. "Come inside," I heard myself say. He followed me into my living room. "My name is Eleanor. I am 68 years old, and this is my story. Before we continue, I need you to understand something. I'm not a woman who expects miracles. I live on a fixed income in a house that's slowly falling apart around me. I count every penny. I keep the thermostat at 62 degrees to save on gas. I learned a long time ago that hope is expensive, and I can't afford it. Now, back to the story. We ended up at the kitchen table. I offered him instant coffee because I needed something to do with my hands. He nodded, looking around my small, worn kitchen like he was trying to memorize it. I poured 2 cups while he sat, setting a leather satchel carefully at his feet. My morning's work was still on the table bills I was juggling, deciding which one to pay late this month. I pushed them aside and sat down across from him. He wrapped both hands around the mug like it was the only warm thing in the world. "He died 2 weeks ago," he said. I didn't ask who. I already knew. "Aneurysm," he said. "It was instant. He was at work." The news landed flat. I'd already mourned my son. I did it 26 years ago when he took our settlement money, $60,000 meant for our retirement, and vanished. You can't grieve someone twice. "He didn't suffer," Leo added, not meeting my eyes. My voice came out harder than I meant it to. "Must be nice. His father suffered. Frank sat in that chair in the living room and died by inches for a year after Michael left. He died of a broken heart." Leo flinched but didn't look away. Instead, he reached into his bag and pulled out a thick, legal envelope sealed with red wax. He set it on the table between us, right next to my unpaid water bill. Then, he placed a key on top of it. It was a long, silver key, a safety deposit box key. "He made me promise to find you," Leo said quietly. "To give you this." I stared at the key. Small, silver, heavy. "What is this?" He said you think he ran away to have a good life," Leo said. "He said you think he bought a sports car and forgot you existed." "Didn't he?" "No." Leo looked at me with those deep brown eyes, Frank's eyes. He lived in a studio apartment in Chicago for 20 years. He worked construction. He never took a vacation. He never bought a house. He saved every dollar. Why? I asked. If he didn't spend it, why did he steal it? He didn't steal it to get rich, Grandma, Leo said. The word grandma hit me like a physical blow. He was running for you. He spent his whole life trying to balance the ledger. I picked up the key. It was cold in my palm. There's a bank downtown, Leo said. He left instructions. We have to go today. I'm not going anywhere with you, I said. I don't know you. Please, Leo said. He touched the envelope. He wrote this for you. He said, she won't want to go. She's stubborn, but tell her the debt is paid. I turned the key over in my fingers. The metal warmed slightly against my skin. I spent over 2 decades hating my son. I woke up angry, went to bed angry. I let that anger keep me warm when the furnace couldn't. Now his son was sitting in my kitchen, telling me I had it all wrong. Get your coat, I said, standing up. Leo looked relieved. You'll come? I want to see what he left, I said, grabbing my purse. If there's nothing in that box but dust, I'm leaving you downtown. Fair enough, Leo said. I locked the front door behind us. I looked at my reflection in the hall mirror, gray hair, lines etched deep around my mouth, eyes that had forgotten how to smile. I was about to get in a car with a stranger who claimed to be my grandson. I was about to find out why my son destroyed us. Or at least, that's what I told myself. Part of me wasn't sure I wanted to know. Truth wouldn't bring back Frank. Truth wouldn't give me back the years of scrubbing floors and eating oatmeal for dinner. But Leo was waiting in the rain, the car engine running. I stepped off the porch and into the storm. We had a bank to find. I climbed into the passenger seat of Leo's rental car. It was a gray sedan that smelled of industrial cleaner and stale airport coffee. The seat was warm. He must have had the heated seats running while he waited for me to open the door. I turned it off immediately. I'm not used to luxury. Leo didn't say anything as he pulled away from the curb. He drove carefully, both hands on the wheel, navigating the potholed streets of my neighborhood. I watched my house disappear in the side mirror, the peeling paint, the overgrown azalea bush I couldn't afford to trim. It looked small and sad, like a tombstone for a life that never quite happened. We're going to the First National downtown, Leo said, breaking the silence. About 20 minutes. I nodded, but I wasn't really there. The rhythm of the windshield wipers' thwack hiss was pulling me backward. It was a time machine, dragging me back to the last time I sat in a car feeling this particular mix of nausea and dread. It dragged me back to 1998. I was 42 then. Frank was 45. We were younger, stronger, but we were already tired. Frank had worked at the assembly plant for 20 years until a pallet of steel beams shifted. It crushed his leg and his career in a single second. The settlement check came 3 months later. $60,000. I remember holding that check in the kitchen. It felt heavy, like it had its own gravity. To us, it wasn't just money. It was Frank's leg. It was his pain. It was our future. It was the guarantee that we wouldn't end up eating cat food when we were 70. Frank didn't trust banks. Banks fail, Ellie, he'd said. They take your money and they gamble with it. This is ours. So, we cashed it. We put the stacks of $100 bills into the Royal Dansk cookie tin, the blue one, with the picture of the farmhouse on the lid. We wrapped the tin in plastic bags and hid it under the loose floorboard in the pantry, behind the broom closet. Our little secret, Frank had said, winking at me. He looked happier than I'd seen him since the accident. Michael was 22 then. He was a good kid, or so we thought. He was working odd jobs, driving his dad's old Ford truck, talking about maybe going to trade school. He knew about the money. Of course he knew. We were a family. We didn't keep secrets. That's for your mom and me, Frank told him at dinner the night we hit it. And one day, it'll be for you. Michael had just nodded. He looked pale that night, I remember. Quiet. I thought he was just coming down with the flu. I woke up 3 days later to a silence that felt wrong. It was a Tuesday, just like today. I went to the kitchen to start the coffee. The back door was unlocked. That was the first thing. We never left the door unlocked. The wind was blowing into the kitchen, cold and sharp. I saw the pantry door standing open. The broom had been knocked over. My heart stopped. That literally, it felt like my chest caved in. I ran to the pantry. The floorboard had been pried up. The dark hole stared back at me like a mouth. The tin was gone. I ran to the window. The driveway was empty. The truck was gone. I don't remember screaming, but Frank said he heard me from the bedroom. He came hopping down the hall on his good leg, his face gray. We stood there in the kitchen, staring at the empty hole in the floor. Maybe he moved it, Frank whispered. Maybe he took it to the bank for us. But we both knew. We called Michael's pager. No answer. We called his friends. No one had seen him. We waited by the phone for 2 days, thinking maybe it was a mistake. Maybe he'd come back, laughing, saying he just borrowed the truck and moved the money for safekeeping. He never came back. Frank died that day. Oh, his heart kept beating for another year. But the man I married died in that pantry. He sat in his armchair by the window, staring at the street, waiting for the truck to pull in. He stopped eating. He stopped laughing. The stroke took him 11 months later, but the doctor should have written betrayal on the death certificate. Eleanor? Leo's voice snapped me back to the present. The windshield wipers were still going. We were merging onto the highway now, the Cleveland skyline rising up through the gray mist. I looked at the boy driving the car. The anger I'd been holding back surged up, hot and choking. He killed him, I said. My voice was low, shaking. Leo gripped the steering wheel tighter. I know. You don't know, I snapped. You can't know. You didn't watch your husband wither away. You didn't have to sell your wedding ring to pay for his funeral because your son took the burial money. Leo flinched. Good. I wanted him to hurt. I wanted him to feel a fraction of what I felt. He told me about that too, Leo said quietly. He told me he knew the exact moment Frank died. He said he felt it happen, even though he was 300 miles away. And yet he never called, I said bitterly. 26 years, Leo, not a postcard, not a phone call. If he felt so guilty, why didn't he pick up the damn phone? Leo signaled to exit the highway. The indicator clicked tick-tock, tick-tock. He picked up the phone 1,000 times, Leo said. He wrote letters he never mailed. He dialed the number and hung up before it rang. Cowardice, I spat. Pure cowardice. Shame, Leo corrected. He said a thief doesn't get to call home. He said he had to fix it first. Fix it? I laughed, harsh and dry. You can't fix dead, Leo. You can't fix 20 years of poverty. I scrubbed floors until my knees gave out. I ate toast for dinner. Does he think an apology note in a safety deposit box fixes that? We were in the city now, driving past the towering glass buildings of the financial district. This was a world I didn't belong to. This was a world for people with retirement funds and summer homes. He didn't think an apology would fix it, Leo said. He pulled the car up to the curb in front of a massive stone building with gold lettering above the door. First National Bank. Leo put the car in park and turned to face me. His eyes were wet, but his jaw was set. He knew he couldn't bring Frank back, Leo said, And he knew you would never forgive him. He didn't do this for forgiveness, Grandma. He did it because he owed a debt. And my father, say what you want about him, but he paid his debts. He stole everything we had, I whispered. I know, Leo said. And he spent every second of the last 26 years trying to buy it back. He opened his door. Come on, let's go see what he left you. I sat there for a moment, looking at the bank. It looked like a fortress. I touched the clasp of my purse, feeling the outline of the silver key inside. Part of me wanted to tell Leo to go to hell, to open the door and walk back home in the rain. But the curiosity was a hook in my gut. And beneath the anger, beneath the grief, there was something else. A question that had haunted me for half a lifetime. Why? We weren't rich, but we loved him. We gave him everything. Why did he do it? Was it drugs? Was it a girl? Was he just bad seeds? If I go in there, I said to the empty car before opening my door, I'm closing the book, one way or another. I stepped out onto the wet pavement. Leo was waiting for me, holding an umbrella. He held it over my head, keeping himself in the rain. After you, he said. We walked toward the revolving doors. I was a 68-year-old widow with holes in her shoes, walking into a bank with the grandson of the man who ruined my life. I took a deep breath of the cold city air. It tasted like metal. Let's get this over with, I said. The inside of the First National Bank smelled like money. That's the only way I can describe it. It didn't smell like the mildew in my basement or the lemon polish I used to clean the church pews. It smelled of crisp paper, cold air conditioning, and absolute silence. The floors were marble, polished to a shine that made me afraid to walk on them with my worn-out sneakers. I clutched my purse against my chest, feeling like an intruder. I didn't belong here. I belonged in line at the grocery store with a handful of coupons, not walking past men in three-piece suits who looked like they owned the city. Leo didn't seem intimidated. He walked straight to the reception desk, his wet trench coat flapping around his legs. I have an appointment with Mr. Henderson, Leo said, for the Vance Trust. The receptionist, a woman with hair so perfect it looked like a helmet, looked at Leo, then at me. Her eyes lingered on my frayed cardigan. One moment, she said, her voice cool. She picked up a phone. A minute later, a heavy oak door opened, and a man walked out. He was older, silver-haired, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my car. Mrs. Vance? He asked, ignoring Leo and looking straight at me. He didn't look at my shoes. He looked at my face with an expression I couldn't place. Respect? Pity? I'm Eleanor Vance, I said, lifting my chin. I might be poor, but I wasn't going to let him look down on me. I'm Charles Henderson, he said, extending a hand. I've been managing your son's accounts for 15 years. Please, come with me. Managing his accounts. The words echoed in my head. Michael was a construction worker. He lived in a studio apartment. What accounts needed managing by a man in a silk tie? We followed him not to an office, but toward the back of the building, past a heavy steel gate. He keyed in a code, and the gate buzzed open. We walked down a flight of stairs into the belly of the building. The vault room was terrifying. It was a wall of steel boxes, thousands of them, numbering floor to ceiling. The air down here was still and recycled. It felt like a crypt. Box 402, Mr. Henderson said. He walked to a row at eye level. He inserted a master key into one of the two keyholes on a long rectangular drawer. Then he stepped back and looked at me. Your key, Mrs. Vance. My hand was shaking. I hated that it was shaking. I wanted to be stone, but my body betrayed me. I pulled the silver key from my purse. It felt hot in my palm. I stepped forward and slid the key into the second lock. It fit with a satisfying click. I turned it. Mr. Henderson pulled the long metal drawer out. He carried it to a small private viewing room off to the side, just a table and 2 chairs, and set it down. "I'll leave you to it," he said softly. He closed the door, leaving me alone with Leo and the metal box. For a long moment, neither of us moved. The box sat there, gray and nondescript. "Open it," Leo said. His voice was barely a whisper. I reached out and flipped the lid. I expected to see cash. In my mind, I pictured the blue tin multiplied stacks of 20s and 100s, maybe dirty, maybe smelling of drywall dust. The money he stole, returned in a lump sum. But the box was filled with paper. Neat, organized file folders. I reached in and pulled out the top document. It was a portfolio summary from an investment firm, dated 3 weeks ago. I looked at the numbers. I blinked, thinking my glasses were dirty. I looked again. Total portfolio value, $1,248,000. I made a sound, a choked, strangled noise that wasn't quite a word. I dropped the paper on the table. "That's a mistake," I said. My voice sounded thin in the small room. "That says 1 million. "It's not a mistake," Leo said. He didn't look surprised. "He took the $60,000 in 1998. He didn't spend a dime of it. He put it all into tech stocks, Amazon, Apple, before they were what they are now. He invested it?" "He obsessed over it," Leo said. "He lived off his wages. Every extra cent he made, he added to the pile. He called it the principal. He told me he couldn't just pay you back the money he took. He had to pay you back for the time, for the suffering. He wanted to pay you interest." I stared at the paper. $1 million. It was an impossible number. It was a number that could have saved Frank. It was a number that could have fixed the roof 10 times over. It was a number that mocked every coupon I'd ever clipped. "It's too late," I whispered, the bitterness rising like bile. "Frank is dead. My knees are shot. What am I supposed to do with this now? Be the richest widow in the graveyard?" "Look at the next paper," Leo said. I looked back at the box. Underneath the financial statement was a thick document bound in blue paper. I pulled it out. "Release of mortgage." I frowned. "I don't understand. I still owe the bank on the house. We refinanced when Frank got sick. I have 5 years left on the loan." I had been sending a check for $680 to Atlas Holdings LLC every month for 15 years. I thought they were just a debt collector who bought my loan from the bank. Leo pointed to the signature line at the bottom of the document. Atlas Holdings LLC. Manager, Michael Vance. The room spun. I had to grab the edge of the table to keep from falling. "He bought your mortgage," Leo said softly. 15 years ago, when the bank was threatening to foreclose. Remember that? I remembered. I had received a terrifying letter saying I was 3 months behind. Then, suddenly, the loan was sold to a new company, and they stopped calling. They just accepted my checks. "He bought the debt," Leo continued. "And every check you sent him, he didn't cash them. Look at the statement." I flipped to the back of the portfolio. There was a separate savings account listed. Eleanor's payments, $122,400. "He saved every check you sent," Leo said. "He was just holding the money for you. The house has been yours for 15 years, Grandma. He just didn't want you to know it was him." I sank into the chair. The papers sprawled across the table, the millions, the deed, the years of deception. He hadn't just run away. He hadn't just stolen. He had been there. He had been the invisible hand holding the roof over my head while I cursed his name. He had been my landlord, my broker, my silent guardian. And he had done it all while living in a box, eating instant noodles, punishing himself so I could have this. "Why?" I asked, tears finally leaking from my eyes. Hot, angry tears. Why go through all this? Why not just come home? Why let me hate him? Leo reached into the bottom of the metal box. Because of this, he said. He pulled out a folded, yellowed piece of paper. But underneath it was something else. A photograph. It was old, the corners bent. It was a picture of me and Frank, standing on the porch of our house in 1997. Frank was leaning on his cane, but he was smiling. I was laughing at something he'd said. He kept this taped to his bathroom mirror, Leo said. He looked at it every morning while he brushed his teeth. He said it was the only thing that kept him working when he wanted to quit. Leo pushed the yellowed paper toward me. And he wrote you a letter, Leo said. He wrote it 3 days before he died. He knew something was wrong with him. He said he had headaches. I think he knew he was running out of time. I looked at the letter. My name was written on the front in handwriting I hadn't seen in 26 years. It was shaky, jagged. Mom. Just that word broke me. I can't, I whispered. I pushed the letter away. I can't read it. Not here. You have to know the rest, Leo said. You know about the money now. But you don't know the real reason he left. You still think he stole the money because he was greedy, don't you? He took it, I said. He emptied the tin. He did, Leo said. His voice turned hard, serious. But he didn't take it for himself. He never told you why he needed $60,000 in cash that night, did he? I shook my head. Read the letter, Leo urged. The money wasn't for a car, Eleanor. It was ransom. The drive back from the city was a blur of gray concrete and red taillights. The rain had stopped, leaving the world slick and cold. I held the metal box on my lap the entire way, clutching it like an urn. In a way, I suppose it was. When we walked back into my house, the silence felt different. Before, it had been the silence of emptiness. Now, it was the silence of a held breath. I set the box on the kitchen table. It looked alien against the chipped formica, a piece of corporate steel, in a room that smelled of old tea and lemon pledge. Leo sat across from me. He didn't take off his coat. He looked exhausted, as if the weight of the secret he'd been carrying was finally crushing him. You need to read it, Leo said softly. I looked at the letter lying on top of the millions of dollars in stock certificates. Mom. The word was written in blue ink, the loop of the M shaky. I had spent 26 years telling myself a story. It was a simple story. I had a son, he got greedy, he stole our future, and he ran away. It was a story that allowed me to be angry instead of heartbroken. Anger is fuel. Heartbreak is just an anchor. If I opened this letter, that story would die. And I wasn't sure I could survive the new one. But Leo was watching me. And Frank? I felt Frank in the room too. In the creak of the floorboards, in the hum of the refrigerator. I picked up the letter. I broke the seal. The paper was thin, crinkled as if it had been balled up and smoothed out a dozen times. The date at the top was from 3 weeks ago. I put on my reading glasses. My hands shook so bad, I had to lay the paper flat on the table. Dear Mom, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And if I'm gone, I can finally stop being a coward. I know you hate me. You have every right to. I left you in that kitchen with a hole in the floor and a hole in your life. I know Dad died thinking I was a thief who didn't care about him. That's the nightmare I wake up to every single day. But I didn't take the money for me. I didn't buy a truck. I didn't go to Vegas. Do you remember the rumors about the warehouse fire on 4th Street? The one in the winter of '98? I was there that night. I wasn't supposed to be. I was dropping off tools for a friend. I saw things I shouldn't have seen. I saw Rayrick do it. I stopped reading. The name Rayrick sent a chill down my spine. I remembered him. Everyone in our neighborhood in the late 90s knew that name. He was a local heavy, a man who ran the unions and the streets. People who crossed him didn't just get beaten up. They had accidents. Houses caught fire. Brakes failed. I looked up at Leo. Rayrick? Leo nodded. Keep reading. I looked back at the page. He saw me, Mom. His guys grabbed me before I could get to the truck. They put a gun in my mouth. They gave me a choice. They said I could go to the police, and they would burn 142 Maple Street to the ground with you and Dad inside. They described your bedroom. They knew Dad couldn't run on his bad leg. Or I could pay a tax, a silence fee. $50,000, cash, within 24 hours. I tried to think of a way out. I thought about telling Dad, but you know Frank. He would have grabbed his shotgun and marched over there, and they would have killed him. They would have killed both of you. I was 22. I was terrified. I didn't want to die, but more than that, I couldn't let them hurt you. I knew about the blue tin. I knew it was everything. I knew taking it would destroy Dad's heart, but not taking it would have stopped his heart for good. I made a choice. I chose your lives over your respect. I gasped. The sound was involuntary, a sharp intake of air that burned my throat. He hadn't stolen from us. He had paid a ransom. I took the money to them that night. I gave them every dollar. They laughed at me. They took the cash, and then they told me I had to leave. They said if I stayed in town, I was a liability. They said if I was still in Ohio the next morning, the deal was off and the house would burn. So I ran. I drove until the gaslight came on, and then I drove some more. I ended up in Chicago with nothing but the clothes on my back and the guilt of knowing I had just robbed the two people I loved most in the world. I planned to call, I swear. I planned to wait a week, let things cool down, and then call and explain. But then I heard the news. I heard Dad died. Mom, I killed him. Maybe not with a gun, but I killed him. I broke his heart, and it killed him. How could I call you after that? How could I say, "Hey, Mom, I did it to save you," when the result was him dying anyway? I sentenced myself. That was my punishment. I didn't deserve to be your son anymore. I didn't deserve to come home. But I couldn't stop watching you. I hired a private investigator just to check on the house. When I found out the bank was going to foreclose, I knew I had to do something. I started working double shifts. I ate ramen. I saved every penny until I could buy the debt. I didn't want the money, Mom. I just wanted to make sure you were warm. I just wanted to make sure you were fed. It was the only job I had left. I'm sorry I was a coward. I'm sorry I didn't come knock on the door. But every time I thought about looking you in the eye, I saw Dad lying in that coffin. The money in the box is yours. It was always yours. I just invested it. I hope it's enough to make the rest of your life easy. I hope it's enough to forgive me, even a little bit. I love you. I loved you every day I was gone. Michael. I put the letter down. The kitchen was silent, but inside my head there was a roaring sound, like a dam breaking. For 26 years, I had held onto my anger like a shield. I had polished it, sharpened it, used it to cut myself off from the world so I wouldn't get hurt again. I had called my son a thief. I had cursed his name when the roof leaked. I had cursed him when I ate toast for dinner. And all that time, he was starving himself to keep a roof over my head. He hadn't abandoned me. He had sacrificed himself for me. He had taken the bullet so I wouldn't have to hear the gun go off. He thought you hated him, Leo said. His voice cracked. Up until the end, he was scared you'd burn the money if you knew it came from him. I looked at the empty chair at the head of the table, Frank's chair. We were so stupid, I whispered. My voice broke, turning into a sob. We were so proud and stupid. We didn't trust him. We assumed the worst. You didn't know, Leo said, reaching across the table to touch my hand. I should have known. I slammed my hand on the table, rattling the metal box. I was his mother. I knew his heart. I knew he wasn't a thief. Why didn't I trust that? Why did I let myself believe he was a monster? The tears came then, not the polite, silent tears of a widow at a funeral. These were ugly, wrenching sobs that shook my entire body. I cried for Frank, who died thinking his son betrayed him. I cried for Michael, living in a tiny room, eating instant noodles, watching me from afar like a ghost. I cried for myself, for the 26 years of bitterness I had nursed when I should have been looking for him. Leo stood up and came around the table. He didn't say anything. He just hugged me. He smelled like rain and wool, and he felt solid and real. I clung to him. I clung to the only piece of my son I had left. He wasn't a thief, I sobbed into his coat. He was a good boy. He was a good boy. He was, Leo whispered. He was the best. We sat there for a long time, the letter lying between us a confession, a suicide note, and a love letter all in one. The millions of dollars in the box didn't matter. The house didn't matter. What mattered was the truth. My son hadn't left me. He had just gone ahead to clear the path. Leo, I said, pulling back and wiping my face with my sleeve. I felt exhausted, hollowed out, but cleaner than I had felt in decades. Is he buried? Leo shook his head. Cremated. He didn't think you'd want him in the family plot. His ashes are in my apartment in Chicago. I looked at the window. The clouds were breaking. A sliver of pale winter sun was touching the wet pavement. Go get your car, I said. Leo blinked. What? Where are we going? We're not going anywhere, I said, my voice finding a new steel. You are going to drive to Chicago, pack your things, and you are going to bring my son home. Grandma, that's a 6-hour drive. Then you better get started, I said, because he's not spending another night in a box on a shelf. He belongs here, with us. Leo left for Chicago an hour later. He tried to argue, said he shouldn't leave me alone so soon after the shock, but I shooed him out the door. I'm a Vance. I don't need a babysitter. I needed silence. I needed to let the new reality settle into the floorboards. Drive safe, I told him at the door. And don't you dare stop for anything but gas. Bring him home. When his taillights disappeared around the corner, the house felt different. For 26 years, this house had been a fortress against the world me inside, everyone else outside. Now, the walls felt thin. I went back to the kitchen table. The metal box was still there, open. The letter lay on top of the millions of dollars in stocks. But there was another folder at the bottom of the box, one I hadn't opened yet. It was a plain manila folder, thick and worn, labeled simply, Incidentals. I sat down and opened it. The first thing I saw was a receipt from Miller's Roofing and Siding, dated 5 years ago. I froze. I remembered that winter. A heavy ice storm had brought a massive oak branch down on the east eave of the house. It had punched a hole right through to the attic. I had stood in the snow in my bathrobe, crying, knowing I didn't have the $3,000 to fix it. I was ready to nail a tarp over it and pray. Then, a truck had pulled up. A man named Miller. He said he was in the neighborhood doing a commercial job and had extra materials he needed to offload for a tax write-off. He fixed the roof for free. I had baked him cookies, thanking God for the miracle. I looked at the receipt in my hand. Customer, Michael Vance. Job site, 142 Maple Street. Notes. Do not contact resident. Bill to account. He had paid for it. Full price. I flipped the page. A medical bill from St. Jude's Hospital, dated 3 years ago. My hip replacement. The copay had been $4,000, an impossible sum. I was going to cancel the surgery. Then the hospital billing department called and said I qualified for a blind donor grant. I stared at the wire transfer confirmation stapled to the bill. Source, Atlas Holdings, LLC. I kept flipping. The transmission repair on my 08 Chevy? Michael. The delinquent property tax notice that mysteriously disappeared. Michael. The time the grocery store clerk said, "You're the 100th customer, your order is free?" I put the folder down. My hands were trembling, but not from grief this time. It was from a strange, overwhelming sense of vertigo. I thought I had been surviving on grit and luck. I thought I was the tough widow who scraped by against the odds, but I wasn't. I had been carried. For 26 years, while I cursed his name, while I told anyone who would listen that my son was dead to me, he had been hovering just out of sight. He was the invisible hand patching the leaks, paying the doctors, smoothing the road so I wouldn't trip. He watched me age. He watched me struggle. And he helped the only way he could anonymously, so I wouldn't have the chance to throw his money back in his face. I walked into the living room and sat in Frank's old chair. The sun was setting, casting long, orange shadows across the rug. "You knew, didn't you?" I whispered to the empty room. "Or maybe you know now." I closed my eyes and pictured Michael. Not the 22-year-old boy who ran away, but the man Leo described. The man in the studio apartment. I saw him sitting at a small table, paying my bills, looking at that photo of me and Frank, eating a lonely dinner so I could have a new roof. He hadn't just paid a ransom to the gang. He had paid a ransom to his own guilt every single day for half his life. Leo returned 3 days later. It was Friday morning. The sky was clear, a crisp, biting blue. I heard the car door slam and walked onto the porch. Leo looked tired. He was wearing the same coat, but he looked lighter somehow. In his hands, he carried a simple wooden box. Cherry wood, polished. He walked up the steps and held it out to me. "I brought him," Leo said softly. I took the box. It was heavier than I expected. Ashes always are. They contain the weight of a life. "Hello, Michael," I whispered. I didn't cry. I had done my crying. This was something else. This was peace. "Come inside," I said to Leo. "I made coffee, and I went grocery shopping." Leo stepped inside, eyeing the kitchen. "You went shopping?" "I did, and I turned the thermostat up to 68. Leo smiled. It was the first time I'd really seen him smile. It transformed his face, making him look less like a haunted ghost and more like a 23-year-old boy. "Living on the edge, Grandma." We sat at the table. I placed the wooden box in the center, next to the sugar bowl. It felt right. "How was the drive?" I asked. "Long," Leo said. He hesitated, tracing the rim of his coffee mug. I looked through his apartment before I left. I found something else." He pulled a small, worn notebook from his pocket. "He kept a journal," Leo said. "Mostly just numbers, job sites, measurements, but there were notes in the margins." He opened it to a page marked with a sticky note. "Read this." I leaned in. The handwriting was rushed, scribbled in pencil. November 24th. Leo asked about the lemon pie today, asked why we never make it. I almost told him. It's because I can't smell lemons without hearing her voice. I told him the oven was broken instead. God, I miss her kitchen. I looked up at Leo. He talked about you all the time, Leo said, his voice thick. I grew up jealous of you, you know. Jealous of me? I snorted. I was a bitter old woman living in a museum of bad memories. I didn't know that, Leo said. I just knew that my dad, who was the strongest, hardest-working guy I knew, put you on a pedestal. He made you sound like a saint. He taught me your recipes. He told me stories about how you could stare down a stray dog and make it sit. I felt like I was competing with a ghost. I reached out and covered Leo's hand with mine. His skin was warm, living. He wasn't a saint, Leo, and neither am I. We were just people who loved each other and got lost in the dark. I looked at the wooden box, then back at the boy who was sitting in my kitchen, alive and here. He missed the lemon pie? I asked. Leo nodded. It was the one thing he always talked about. Thanksgiving. The pie. I stood up. My knees popped, but I didn't wince. Well, I said, walking to the pantry. Tomorrow is Saturday, but I don't see why we can't practice for Thanksgiving a little early. I opened the pantry door. I reached past the broom, past the spot on the floor where the hole used to be. I grabbed the bag of flour and the sugar. Do you know how to peel lemons, Leo? He stood up, shrugging off his coat. Dad taught me, but he said I never got the zest right, said I was too heavy-handed. I handed him a paring knife. Then you're going to learn, I said, because if we're going to do this, we're going to do it right. For him. Leo took the knife. He looked at me, and for a second, I saw 3 generations in his face. Frank's eyes, Michael's smile, and something new hope. Yes, ma'am, he said. We started baking, and for the first time in 26 years, the house didn't smell like dust and regret. It smelled like lemons. Thanksgiving morning arrived with a sky the color of polished steel, cold and bright. For the last 25 years, Thanksgiving had been a day I endured. I would usually heat up a turkey pot pie, watch the parade on television until the silence got too loud, and go to bed by 7. It was just a Thursday with better commercials. But this year, my kitchen windows were steamed up. The house smelled of sage, roasting onions, and the sweet, sharp tang of lemon zest. I stood at the counter, wrestling with a 20-pound turkey. Leo was sitting at the table, peeling potatoes. He was wearing one of Frank's old flannel shirts I had dug out of the cedar chest. It was a little big in the shoulders, but it suited him. You're peeling them too thick, I scolded, but there was no bite in my voice. You're throwing away the best part. Leo grinned, holding up a potato. I'm an artist, Grandma. I'm sculpting. You're wasting starch, I said, suppressing a smile. Hurry up. We have to leave in 20 minutes. We weren't just eating dinner today. We had an errand to run first. I wiped my hands on my apron and looked at the calendar on the wall. I had already marked next Monday, meet with lawyer. I hadn't bought a mansion. I hadn't ordered a sports car. I was still Eleanor Vance, and I still reused aluminum foil. But I had made decisions. The money Michael left the principal, as he called it, was going into a trust. The house was fully mine now. I was going to fix the porch steps that had been rotting for a decade. I was going to get a new furnace that didn't sound like a dying tractor. And the rest? The rest was for Leo. He wanted to start his own design firm in Chicago. He wasn't going to have to starve to do it. He wasn't going to have to carry the weight of a blue tin around his neck. Ready? Leo asked, washing the starch off his hands. Get the box, I said. We drove to Pine Ridge Cemetery in my Chevy. The transmission shifted smoothly, another silent gift from Michael I finally appreciated. The cemetery was quiet, the grass brown and stiff with frost. We walked to the family plot near the big oak tree. Frank's headstone was there, simple gray granite. Frank Vance, beloved husband and father. Next to it was an empty space, a space I had bought 20 years ago, intending it for myself. Leo carried the cherry wood box. He looked nervous. "Are you sure about this? We could have done a formal service." "No," I said, clutching my coat against the wind. Michael hated crowds, and he hated fuss. This is family business. I knelt down on the hard ground. I had brought a small garden trowel. The ground was half frozen, but I dug. I didn't dig a deep hole, just enough to nestle the box into the earth, right next to where Frank's heart would be. I placed the box in the shallow grave. "He thought he couldn't come back," I said, speaking to the dirt, to the air, to Frank. "He thought he broke this family." I reached out and touched Frank's cold headstone, then rested my hand on the wooden box. "You were both stubborn fools," I said, my voice thick. "You," I tapped the headstone, "for being too proud to ask for help. And you," I tapped the box, "for thinking love is a transaction you have to balance." A crow called out from the oak tree. The wind bit at my cheeks, making my eyes water. "He paid it back, Frank," I whispered. "He paid it back 1,000 times. So you move over, you make room, your son is home." I covered the box with the earth. I patted it down with my bare hand, not caring about the cold or the dirt under my fingernails. Leo stepped forward and placed a single white rose on the fresh earth. "Goodbye, Dad," he choked out. I stood up, brushing the dirt from my knees. I put my arm around Leo's waist. He was tall, solid, alive. "Not goodbye," I corrected him. "He's just done running." We stood there for a long time, 3 generations of Vances reunited on a cold Ohio hill. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was just peace. The drive home was lighter. We listened to the radio some pop song I didn't know, but I tapped my fingers on the dashboard anyway. Back in the house, the turkey was golden brown. We mashed the potatoes, lumpy, just the way Frank liked them, and made the gravy. We sat at the small kitchen table, just the 2 of us, but the room felt full. We ate until we were stuffed. We told stories. Leo told me about Michael's terrible attempts at dating, about how he used to sing along to the radio in the truck but only knew the chorus. I told Leo about the time Michael tried to build a raft in the backyard and nearly flooded the basement. We laughed. I hadn't laughed like that in years, the kind of laugh that hurts your ribs. Then it was time for the pie. I brought it to the table. The meringue was high and toasted perfectly golden. The lemon filling wobbled just right. I cut a slice for Leo. He took a bite, closed his eyes, and sighed. "It tastes like him," he said quietly. "He used to try to make this every year. It was never this good, but the taste, it's the same." He put the fork down and looked at me. The laughter faded, replaced by the serious expression that made him look so much like his father. "Grandma," he said, "can I ask you something?" "You can ask." "Do you forgive him?" The question hung over the half-eaten pie. I looked out the window. The streetlights were coming on, casting amber pools on the wet sidewalk. I thought about the blue tin. I thought about the years of anger, the poverty, the loneliness. I thought about the letter in the safe deposit box. I looked back at Leo. Forgiveness is a tricky word, Leo. It implies he sinned against me out of malice. I took a sip of my coffee. "He broke my heart," I said. "He broke his father's heart, but he did it because he loved us more than he loved himself. He took a bullet for this family, and then he spent 26 years trying to heal the wound." I reached across the table and squeezed Leo's hand. I don't just forgive him, I said firmly. I understand him, and I am proud of him. I am so damn proud that he was mine. Leo's eyes filled with tears, but he smiled, a genuine, unburdened smile. He would have liked to hear that, Leo said. He knows, I said. I told him at the grave, and I'm going to tell him every day. I stood up and started clearing the plates. Now, I said briskly, are you going to help me with these dishes? Or are you going to let an old woman with $1 million portfolio do it all herself? Leo laughed, pushing his chair back. I got it, Grandma. You sit down. I didn't sit down, of course. We washed them together, side by side at the sink. My hands in the soapy water, him drying. Outside, the first flakes of real winter snow began to fall, dusting the neighborhood in white. But inside, the furnace was humming, set to 68. The house smelled of lemon and love, and for the first time in a very long time, I wasn't waiting for anything. I was exactly where I was supposed to be.